We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, August 15th, 2024, as we record this new episode. The Chicago White Sox lost another series, this time to the New York Yankees. That was expected, as the White Sox now have a 29-93 record and are 43.5 games back of the Cleveland Guardians in the American League Central. But a weird thing happened in that series against the Yankees. The White Sox possibly had their best win of the season on Monday night when they bashed the Yankees to a 12-2 victory. A slight reprieve, but nonetheless very appreciative, as Andrew Benintendi and Gavin Sheets showed new signs of life at the plate. We'll discuss those lefties' recent offensive outburst, Dominic Fletcher getting an extended run in right field to finish the season, preview the upcoming Astros series, and check in on some White Sox business, which includes the season ticket renewals being sent out and a TV broadcast update for next season. Joining me from Charlotte, North Carolina on assignment is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan, and from Nashville, Tennessee, chilling at home, managing editor Jim Margulis. Hello, gentlemen. James, how's Charlotte in the early going?
They won, so we've been looking at minor league win-losses a lot more just because they've been so putrid for so many years. So Charlotte winning a game means that championships are on the horizon for the organization. It wasn't a very action-packed game. It was started by Yohan Dominguez, who, was just kind of age and his slow progression. You could probably put the label of org arm on, but you can also see him his first inning, he came out and struck out Riley Green on a rehab assignment, and Spencer Torkelson with pretty authoritatively. I think you can squint and see some guy who comes out of the bullpen and throws a lot of sliders, and you can also see a guy who soaks up a lot of innings by going right at hitters in AAA, and is a break from maybe the more controlled walk-handled prospects. But as far as seeing the big guys do much, Ramos had a walk-off single, but it was very much a bloop after, kind of spraying a slider into short center after a whole night of just being spammed with sliders. He kind of got one a little bit, so to speak. Tim Elko had a couple hits. For someone who, my first look at in person of somebody who's lauded for being a power hitter, I know we can't assume that guys who look like power hitters in the White Sox organization are actually going to hit for power. But to see him kind of spray a couple singles when they try to jam him to right field, extended his hitting streak to 13 games, seems like he's handling a level pretty okay for a guy who started out the year in AA. And maybe some of us didn't ever think he'd get this far. So showing a lot more, hitability, hitterishness, hit tool than maybe was particularly slapped on him when he first got into pro ball. As far as seeing Edgar Carroll had the night off, he was in the dugout. He was not getting called up. But as far as seeing the top prospect, Colson, he had another tough night. It kind of if I was going into the game kind of thinking like I'd really love to see him impact the ball above the belt, he didn't do that. I mean, he didn't have solid contact on the night. He struck out twice, but it seemed like the at bat that really bothered him is he got a 3-1 count in his second at bat, and he got something kind of upstairs, and it just wasn't accurate with his barrel, and wound up kind of rolling over into it, and that seemed what ticked him off. But saw him foul off some tough elevated fastballs and then get a swing over a slider that was tunnel off of it. And, that's what happens when you don't put the good fastball you get to hit and play. Saw him take a tough call outer half to strike out backwards, and saw him kind of get jammed. But it wasn't like, man, this guy stinks or anything like that. But as far as like leaping out to you and showing you he's like a top 30 prospect of baseball, it looked like more of a guy who's been struggling all year, which he has been. So I thought Ramos was pretty interesting post game because I talked to Jersley before I left. He's like, Ramos has got to stay up the middle. And talking to Giannis before I left, he's like, he's all about approach for him. And it's like, all right, these are broadly true, but I need to know a bit more what I'm looking at when I go there. And I watched him kind of just get thrown sliders long away over and over again. And there's definitely some at bats. I think he struck out once or twice where he got dotted to go to 0-2 his first at bat on 2 pitches he clearly wasn't looking for, and then the third pitch was a chase slider. He chased it. He kind of seemed like he was figuring out or adjusting to it. Something he was saying is like, I got to stay up the middle because I see spin more when I'm staying up the middle. I'm not pulling off the ball. And the thing I get into is that when people just throw me sliders over and over again, I start leaning out for that. And that's when I get busted heater in. I saw that happen to him in that bat for like a jam shot out of some kind. So him kind of realizing the pattern of how he's facing, that it's going to be slider to get rid of his power. And that's when he's kind of got to not lose his approach to that degree and still be ready for when they come back inside of the heater. I thought that was insightful for him. But it seems like he's still kind of in the process of, he's kind of understanding why he's struggling right now, but maybe isn't necessarily putting it into action just yet. But he said like, I know I can hit. I know I'm going to get through this, which I thought was encouraging to hear. Maybe Colson will say something similarly convincing when I talk to him tomorrow. And, we'll know from a single interview with a beat writer that everything's going to be all right. But until then, we're still finding our way. Had a really good talk with Nick Nastrini. He really thinks like his last outing, which was really good statistically. I asked like, is this the best you felt all year? And he's like, absolutely. And he feels like much of that is like mentally that he kind of got dragged to like a come to Jesus moment by this season. But he's also made a mechanical thing where his back leg, his first leg step is a lot more consistent. He feels like he's able to command the fastball a lot better as a result. And if he's able to throw his fastball up, he could throw his curveball off of that. Whereas when he was in majors, we're just seeing him throw slider, because that's the thing that tunnels off his low heater. And when he doesn't have the upstairs heater, everybody leans out and they can kind of stay with the slider a little bit. So him being able to work that up in the upper quadrant seems like it's the game changer for him.
Kind of interesting listening to Nastrini talk about his last start, and because when he was in Chicago, he didn't want to necessarily admit or concede that the control was a problem. Like he sounded strangely confident for the walk numbers and just how every inning was a battle. And then finally, like it seemed like when I think it was Elijah Evans was talking to him and saying, or along the same lines, it's best he felt like, yeah, it was a battle in Chicago. So finally, like I think with some distance and maybe some not having to present a front of, yeah, I'm confident. I know I can do this. I'm not going to let my words take me out of the majors. my numbers maybe do it, but I'm not going to validate anything with my comments publicly. It did seem like, oh, he's actually acknowledging the problem, or at least, he's comfortable talking about it. And it sounds less about like really pressing and more about an honest assessment of his game.
Yeah, he seems like he's speaking about somebody, but speaking in a way about like somebody who's kind of on the other side of things. And, one of the things is like, yeah, turns out getting pneumonia at the start of the season was kind of a big deal. Like that kind of really threw me out of whack for a while, longer than I was like admitting at the time. So he's definitely talking more frankly, about how things were for him now that he feels like he's in a measure of past tense with it.
Well, excellent stuff so far. I'm excited to see your additional reports, not just from Charlotte, but everywhere from North Carolina, as you'll be also stopping by Kannapolis, talk to the recent draftees for the Chicago White Sox. And with James and Charlotte, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. You guys make this possible. Thank you for supporting us all season long. And if you currently don't support us and you want full access to James's coverage down in the farm system for the Chicago White Sox, visiting Charlotte, visiting Kannapolis, you can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. It's a great time to do so before the season ends. And you also get a discount with an annual subscription. Monthly plans start at $5. Again, you can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Excited to see your additional reports from North Carolina, James. And before you went to North Carolina, you were in Chicago, of course, helping cover the Yankees series as the White Sox lost 2 out of 3, which means the good news, they won a game. They won the first game 12-2. The next 2 games, not great. They lost 4-1 as Juan Soto hit 3 home runs. And in the third game, despite having the lead in the 7th inning, shocker, things got out of hand again as they lost 10-2. Soto hit another home run, but the big news is that Aaron Judge hit his 300th home run of his career. Funny enough, according to Baseball Savant, that home run would have not been a home run at Yankee Stadium. So he benefits from Guarantee Rate Field a little bit with that blast. But I want to talk about the win of the season, perhaps, because it was a huge surprise, Jim. I wasn't expecting the White Sox to come out, especially the left-handed bats. Andrew Benintendi getting great swings. We'll talk about Gavin Sheets in a moment. Brooks Baldwin had a home run. And for how terrible this season has been, it was nice to have a random baseball event for the White Sox. But random means out of the blue, they blow out maybe the best team in baseball by 10 runs.
As a treat. That's what it felt like. You've been watching for this long.
Yeah.
Here's a little something, you fools, for still tuning in. We thought we'd get rid of you, and you're still showing up to the games. You still hang some kind of measure of happiness on the outcome, even if you've long determined that the season isn't going, could be a disaster to historic proportions at this point, looks likely. And yet, you're still watching. So here you go. This ought to tide you over for a while. But it was very cathartic. It was a hell of a way for Grady Sizemore to pick up his first win. I was kind of hoping, like halfway through the game, that the Yankees would lose by 1 run, and their struggles to pin Kai Bush after all the base runners he had on, all the traffic leaving him loaded, etc. They would lose by 5-4, something like that. And you just hear all the lamentations about, if only had 1 hit and going 2 for 18, we can't do that. And it ended up being a laugher in the other way, which I think is the second funniest way to win. I think something like 7-2 would have been kind of a bummer. So I was hoping for either 3-2, where all those missed opportunities come back to bite them, or 12-2, in which the White Sox set season highs for hits and extra base hits and margin of victory, etc. Yeah, that was very enjoyable, and then it was back to normal.
James, what was it like for you being at the game and watch this unfold?
This team hardly needs this from me, but I feel like they didn't play that well. The way that they've had to win games typically is especially because their offense is letter perfect, pitching and defense. The pitching should have gotten rocked at multiple stages. They legitimately could have been down 6-2 at one point in the game, but with a strong breeze out to right. They had walked 11 people. That was also a season high for a season where they haven't done the best at throwing strikes. The door was left wide open and just no one happened to march through at multiple points. So it's kind of like a game where, I think a normal team in a normal season has games that you aren't supposed to win. And this one kind of broke open from the big way. And there was I think the score got distended by a little bit of Tim Hill came out for a third inning at one point. It was just for one guy, but still very much like this isn't the Yankees like with their foot on the gas type of management. And that was before the very like we're DFAing you type of outing from Enio de los Santos that we got, where gave up 6 straight hits and stayed in the game. Like I overheard a little chatter later in the weekend, like we actually made a reliever lose his job in the clubhouse afterwards, with a little like, wow, we can still do that type of thing. So it definitely was it got like outsized unnaturally, and they kind of danced through what they were, allowing. I think the next night where Soto hits 3 home runs is kind of more of a situation where you get beat even though you seemingly reduce the opportunities for like their best guys to hurt you. Like 2 of those home runs were solo. They kind of left it wide open for those 2 guys to break the game open on multiple occasions. Like they did all the things you weren't supposed to do, as far as like setting them up for situations where they can really beat you and you have to pitch to them, and got away with it. And yeah, they were extremely due for a night like that. It just wasn't like this is the new brand of like tight baseball that's going to produce better outcomes. Arguably better played games have been losses, under the Sizemore era, but also we're looking at a Sizemore era where they're 1-4. They're worse under him than Grifol. What are we talking about with the new energy? So yeah, weird, surreal. That's kind of been the vibe the whole Sizemore era.
It was still fun. It was crazy to watch. At times I could not believe that this was happening. I like the mini meltdown for Yankees Twitter and New York media. They labeled it as the most embarrassing loss of the season. How did this Yankees team lose by 10 to this White Sox team? But everything worked out. I mean, Judge eventually hit his 300th home run, career 300th home run. They did not lose any ground with Baltimore despite losing Monday night against the White Sox. So everything is fine as fine can be in Yankeesdom, but at least the White Sox got one win against the Yankees in a laugher. Now, what has been surprising, I guess in this homestand, but especially in the last 7 games, is Gavin Sheets breaking out of nowhere, it seems. So from June 28th to August 10th, a 30-game span, Gavin Sheets hit 3 doubles, no home runs, and drove in just 3. He had only 3 RBIs in 30 games from that stretch. In the Monday win against the Yankees, Gavin Sheets hit 3 doubles. And in the series against the Yankees, Sheets went 7 for 13 with 4 doubles and a home run and drove in 6 RBIs against the Yankees. So he did more damage in these 3 games than he did in his previous 30 with the White Sox. Here's audio from Sheets explaining his recent hot streak.
Just getting back to using the whole field. That's what I did really well in April and May. And, I started to chase power naturally. And the wrong ways, trying to pull off the ball and hit the ball to right field. But, feel good getting back to full field and using the field again. I felt like I was close to, in Oakland. I thought I was making good swings there. And obviously last week we're making really good swings out to the field and, paid off with one that got out, which has been a while. So obviously felt good there. And I'm just going to try to continue this.
Now, James, with Sheets explaining to you and the rest of the beat reporters that he's going back to focusing and trying to spray the ball all fields, and going opposite field to left field was very effective for Sheets against the Yankees. Sheets is 13 for 27 in his last 7 games. Are we going to see a hot Gavin Sheets for the last 6 weeks as he's trying to salvage his season numbers?
I don't know. I certainly have talked to Gavin.
I guess a better way to answer is is this approach going to work for Gavin Sheets? Because we've seen him in his White Sox career. He has spurts where going opposite field consistently works for a couple of weeks. Then opposing pitchers just pound the inside part of the strike zone against him, and then he can't effectively go to the opposite field. It just seems like this is when this works for him in a series, he sticks with it too long?
Yeah, so upon the readjustment of your question, my answer is I don't know. Um, I have talked to Gavin and had him talk about I really gotta think about right center. I need to be aggressive. I can't pulling the ball is important. I can't sway off of it. It's kind of like something that sways in response to how he's feeling, how he's being pitched. Like there's not like one set it and forget it type of mode. Like, yeah, he can't be pull only. He can't necessarily chase power, but it's something that it's changed at different times based on how he's feeling and how he's being attacked. Like he's rarely putting like a series of just like empty at bats where he's just swinging at everything. Like I was talking about Ramos a little bit. Like he had one at bat where he swung at like a couple sliders in a row, and then you see him kind of slowly adjust. And he's 22 and he's driven AAA, and that's a bit more progression you see. Like Gavin never has those type of bats. Like he tends to, hang tough and battle and adjust pitch to pitch to how he's being attacked, but like it just doesn't result in like climactic contact at the end very consistently for long stretches of time. End of May or certainly in April when he was kind of carrying the offense a little bit, like he looks like not an unlegit guy to have in the middle of an order of a second division team or like a useful person who's facing righties for a good team as he was in 2021. But you just feel like he gets on a little spurt where he's doing well or working one side of the field or responding how he's taken, and then it gets taken away from him, and then you see a couple weeks of inactivity or it stretches on to months. And now that we're getting kind of, I'd be interested to see if just taking outfield off of his plate and what that does for his legs. Not that he's ever complained or had any injuries or anything like that, but just, what would playing his natural position do for him? Certainly a line of logic we were following with Andrew Vaughn one time that we were hoping that would key a breakout for him. I'm curious what that would do. I wouldn't want to write him off as a big leaguer, but I feel like the way it kind of sways back and forth and, get some spurts and then he can get shut down for a while. It just seems like a somewhat limited hitter in terms of like, there's not one. He's not so great at just maintaining an area where you can't go there in his strike zone. Like you have to stay away from this area because he can punish you there consistently. That seems like something that changes based on like how he's being faced or how he's approaching it. It just seems like he's got to really be on top of his adjustments to be effective. And we've seen a lot of outages over the last couple of years where it makes you wonder, like, when he's really scrutinized, when he's at the middle of the order, where he's like one of the guys they have to shut down, like, is it a little hard for him to really maintain coverage of both sides of the plate very consistently, be a dangerous hitter? Because it's been hard for him to really be consistent when he is a fulcrum of the offense over the last 2 years.
Yeah, for Gavin Sheets in his time with the White Sox, he's still chasing his rookie season. In 2021, in 54 games, Sheets hit 11 home runs and 34 RBIs. Very good numbers for 54 games, batting .250 with a .324 on base percentage and slugging .506. That's an .830 OPS. We were hopeful that this could be a surprise power bat for the White Sox, but now after 403 games, over 1,100 at-bats, despite this hot streak from Sheets, his career numbers are .230 with a .296 on base percentage and slugging .394. That's a career .690 OPS.
Yeah, it's funny too when you go to the numbers. I was looking at what he did in the previous 3 years, and yeah, it comes out to .690. So basically, like this hot streak basically gets him to where he was his entire career, and I think that's fair just because like he's not a bad hitter. He's not somebody who's going to be, or should be, you're talking about like a weighted runs created plus that begins with like a 7 or something like that. Like it shouldn't never get that bad because he has an approach. He has the ability to, go with pitches, whether to pull a ball or go the opposite way. One thing I thought with Sheets is when they implemented the shift ban, like I wondered if that would hurt him approach wise, just because he liked dinking singles and the occasional double to left field, like as an like kind of escape valve when counts weren't going his way, and then be like, okay, if I'm looking for a changeup, or if I'm just going to wait back and shoot something to left field. And he got like a lot of like a dozen or so cheap hits, like the rookie year, and like when he was going good early in 2022. And I think that urge to pull the ball might have been in response to, not having as open of a left side and thinking, well, there's, now opportunities to hit the ball through the right side a little bit. And being that he's a big plotting fella, that, he's not going to be somebody who provides outfield value, not going to be somebody who provides base running value. So he does have to hit homers. And he does probably have to seek them out a little bit more, but it is like a very delicate process. I imagine, reading the comments on Sox Machine, I think there's a fair contingent that wouldn't mind seeing his OPS plus start with a 7 or weighted runs created plus. Like just have a miserable season just so the White Sox can turn the page rather than false hope, because he is a frustrating player to watch, especially with the way the White Sox have handled him. Like, some things aren't his fault. Playing the outfield way too much for 4 consecutive years, not his fault. And I think that's the root cause of why fans are just, if the White Sox can't acknowledge that he's not an outfielder, then somebody needs to take him away from the White Sox coaching staff, I think is maybe the presiding mentality for this cross section of fans. But yeah, like James said, over the next 6 weeks, if he is playing DH and first base because Grady Sizemore has not played him in the outfield since taking over, and maybe that's one of the key points of contention between Getz and Grifol that Getz has alluded to, then maybe it's a case of him being able to provide a definitive answer, just what kind of bat he is for the position he should be playing.
Like Jim has a small child that keeps chewing on something that's not designed for chewing. You take it away from them.
Yeah, childproofing.
You don't say like, actually, my car keys, they're solely for this, and then hand it back to them and trust them to get it away.
Well, I give Sheets credit. He plays outfield better than Andrew Vaughn has. Still not good. And we'll talk about the White Sox plans for the rest of the season in right field in a moment.
Yeah, you can't be mad at Gavin Sheets.
Again, he's doing the best that he can. He's got a shockingly strong arm for right field. Just not an outfielder. Just doesn't have the foot speed or the level of athleticism that you would like to cover the space on the right field.
Also, it's a not bad thing. Like, dude cares. Like you see him like centralize the media reports a lot because like he's willing to like talk on behalf of the team and like say we have to do better and own stuff like all the time. Like he has a central, like it's hard to like sit him down because he has a central role in the clubhouse, and maybe people view that as like, we wish we could optimize our lineup, but like, guys who like are willing to be the face of the team, especially in this point of the team, they don't grow on trees. So like it's not worth nothing, even if it's not something that's going to be on his BREF page.
What I was going to say is that Sheets is entering his first year arbitration in 2025. So cost-wise, he's not expensive. Whereas Andrew Vaughn is entering his second year of arbitration. I think Vaughn's still going to be cheap-ish, but I'm curious on how the Sox Machine offseason plan projects will handle both of these players. Sheets, I'm incredibly confident, is coming back to the White Sox in 2025. Vaughn, I could see a case where maybe the team wants to move on, but at the same time, because he doesn't cost more, I'm assuming won't cost more than $5 million in 2025, that Vaughn will be coming back. But it'll be interesting as part of the conversation moving forward and how Sizemore handles defensive playing time at first base and who gets more starts at first base, Sheets or Vaughn.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
But back to right field. With Sheets not playing the outfield anymore since Grady Sizemore has taken over as manager, Sizemore did tell James that we should expect to see Dominic Fletcher now get an extended run in right field. And Jim, you wrote about this in a larger scope because thanks to the great work of Mike Petriello of MLB.com, him raving about outfield defense, which is hilarious because then here's the Chicago White Sox. Not great outfield defense. But as soon as you write about Fletcher, this was in the aftermath of Fletcher making 3 great defensive plays. And I would say that overall his 2024 season has been a disappointment. But looking at the 6-week sample size here, can Fletcher prove, Jim, that maybe he can be, again, the primary answer in right field for 2025?
I think he's one of the most useful ways to use playing time, or at least one of the centers of evaluation over the last 6 weeks. I think so much of the season, especially on the position player side, the die may be cast for just exactly what they can be expected to offer. But Fletcher, because he had the miserable start because he injured his shoulder, making that catch in Milwaukee, like the slow start is just performance, and maybe the skepticism of like why he wasn't the outside looking in of the Arizona picture. Like, that's a case of that just might have been true talent level. But then when it comes to the shoulder injury, working his way back, like the lengthy rehab, and then like optioning him to Charlotte, worth another shot. And given that you have a young pitching staff and a lot of young starters you're trying to get every possible out for, and some positions may not be equipped to do that, it makes sense in 2 fronts. One, to evaluate Fletcher, and another one to have Fletcher being able to support young pitchers and be able to steal an out for Davis Martin with a great sliding catch along the right field wall that no other outfielder playing for the White Sox is, assuming Luis Robert Jr. is never playing right field for the White Sox, would be able to make. So you can see the value there. If he can prove himself to be a major league of some sort, whether he's a second division starter, whether he's like a platoon bat that a lot of teams wouldn't mind having, they need somebody like that for the next year, whether it's because they need hitters who can fill out a lineup against right-handed pitching, or defenders who can support a still young pitching staff, assuming they don't just completely overhaul what looks like a pretty promising, or at least worthwhile 1 through 5 next year. There are some uses for him, so it's nice that Sizemore is buying into him and trying to pump him up, because I think Grifol was never that enthusiastic about him. Like, maybe it was just the slow start, maybe it was something else, but he always had him on the outside, even though Benintendi was playing god-awful defense and left with the Achilles thing, and Sheets playing bless your heart defense and rights. Like, there are all these opportunities to get him playing time, and just Grifol never really seemed all that interested in doing it. So good thing the White Sox have a manager now who seems invested in seeing this work, and might have, because they overlapped in Arizona, right? I'm thinking with Sizemore being around Diamondbacks.
I think Sizemore was more low minors. Like, they talked about him working the ACL a lot, but I think
okay,
at least from just being in camp in spring, would have some familiarity with Dominic Fletcher, and also being a guy who's worked on outfield and base running, maybe directly interact with him more than Pedro Grifol. Also just seemingly more in line with the front office, who wants to see the guy they traded for play right field.
When looking at the advanced metrics, defensive runs saved in just 268 innings in right field this season. Fletcher +3, outs above average, StatCast 1. These aren't huge numbers. I'm not even going to bother telling you what the other right fielders have been for the White Sox. Jim has done that on the SoxMachine.com. We have been harping on this for years. Not only the offensive shortfalls at right field for the White Sox, but also defensively, and just how ugly the numbers can be. Dominic Fletcher, again, looking ahead when it comes to player payroll, is going to be cheap, league minimum, going into next season for the Chicago White Sox. So I like this idea. I mean, if the former outfielder Grady Sizemore, who was a phenomenal outfielder at his time in Cleveland, if Sizemore wants to give him a shot and sees this as an opportunity in the last 6 weeks to coach him up, then plant Fletcher in right field and start him every single day unless there's a tough lefty that you don't want Fletcher to see, which may be happening this weekend. But I like this idea. I already like some of the minor adjustments that Sizemore has made or the front office has asked Sizemore to make. One adjustment that has been eye-opening that you wrote about, James, is Davis Martin now utilizing the changeup. In his last start against the Yankees, I thought it was a good start. He threw 85 pitches, and what's very odd, and I don't know when the last time we saw this, Jim, maybe an Eric Fetty start this season, a true 5-pitch mix from a White Sox starter. 27 four-seam fastballs, 26 changeups, 11 curves, 11 cutters, and 10 sliders from Davis Martin. And out of the 15 swings from Yankees batters, 5 whiffs. That's a 33% whiff rate against Davis Martin's changeup. And this is a brand new pitch. And explain the story here of how this came to be, because this really seems like Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz watching scouting film of another pitcher from a different team and both agreeing that this could work with Davis Martin. And here we are. The Dart now is throwing a changeup that has some promise to it.
Davis Martin was a throw his slider more than his fastball guy pre-injury in 2022 already. So he's already probably a guy who's going to throw kitchen sink at you a little bit. He had a changeup, it just wasn't as good as this one. He's not getting the same extension on his arm on his four-seamer post TJ. And this is something that apparently happens to people. I think if you're someone like maybe Zach Birdie and you don't have an elite ride fastball anymore, kind of catastrophic. Not saying that's what happened to him, but that'd be an example of you hear TJ has a great success rate, but some guys just come back and they're not good pitchers anymore. So he lost a little, maybe 2-3 inches of inverted vertical break on his heater. But he was already a guy who didn't count on dominating his heater. He can hit 97, but he usually hit libs 92, 93. So not getting ride on it anymore. Now it's a very almost, it's not a changeup, but it's sort of way where it's his fastball is the change of pace pitch. He's not throwing it to establish it. He's throwing it because you're already sitting on something that's going to spin. So because of that, and because he's already kind of cutting the ball more often, they just said you should add a cutter. And also your four-seamer is not going to play well to lefties anyway. This is what you're going to do to throw to get up and in on lefties and kind of back them off. So with that, and because he's now throwing with the cutter, slider, and curveball, he's basically spinning 3 breaking balls that are all going to the glove side. He's really supination oriented, which is, kind of breaking off the side to throw that breaking ball. You really need something that moves to the glove side, and he kind of had their arm side, and he has this kind of inconsistent changeup, and they're looking for ways to soup it up. So Hayden Birdsong's this rookie pitcher with the Giants, who's kind of in a similar mode. He throws 2 breaking balls that are possibly plus at this point, kind of have as a below average heater. And, because he's kind of got that feel for breaking balls and snapping the ball up, they're figuring out how are we going to get him to throw a good change? Because traditionally you pronate, you kind of turn your wrist over the other direction, you would for a breaking ball. But if you're so good at breaking balls, you're probably not going to be that good at pronating. So they're trying to think of a way for what will work with Davis Martin. And there's a little miscommunication between me and Katz, or, I was saying so is he throwing a seam shift, is he using seam shift weight, kind of like Jake Eater? And he's yeah, it's kind of like that. So it's specifically this kick changeup grip that Birdsong was using, where it's it's definitely using the seams. It's definitely trying to create that little trying to push them with your knuckle, like one that's kind of kicked. I can't get that technical to grip, but it's a grip change. He's someone who can't feel or manipulate the changeup. He's got to kind of have a grip and just rip it as hard as he can, because that's how he throws all his breaking balls. And they found something that works for him that gets it was 90 miles an hour a couple times, I think, the one he struck out Aaron Judge with. But it looks almost straight down. There's a little bit of arm side, but it's something that works for him, or how he throws already, where he can just kind of put a grip on, throw it hard as hell, and it gives him a changeup movement, and certainly gives him a ton of changeup drop, even if it's not a huge velo separation thing. It's worked great, and more than anything, he literally learned it the day before the Oakland start and was immediately throwing and commanding it well. So it's it's fit into his arms arsenal pretty seamlessly. And yes, it's really interesting that they could add what's potentially a plus pitch and what he already feels is an out pitch and is using really heavily, just off video, just off scouting at other people. It somehow gets surreal about how much like Bannister will reference Giants pitchers or reference Red Sox pitchers, but for him to just be watching a Giants game and give a guy a new pitch, pretty cool that Ethan Katz would collaborate with it. And I think the biggest endorsement of it is that Martin mentioned it was a kick change in the post-game interviews the other night. And Jonathan Cannon like heard it from like 2 lockers over and immediately like looked over and started nodding like that Jack Nicholson meme from was it Anger Management? Like, yes, this is the way. So I think his teammates are in a proper level of admiration of it, but that makes me buy in. I don't think there's any better endorsement of your peers than they hear mentioning your pitch and start nodding like the Cheshire Cat, the way Cannon was. It seemed like a cool moment.
Yeah, I thought when you mentioned that Martin was, had a changeup that he could throw as hard as he felt, naturally doing so, it reminded me of like Cannon's development with the changeup too, because that was the thing that allowed Cannon to find a changeup that worked for him, right? Was one that he didn't have to worry about slowing down his arm or pronating in a way that was natural to him. Like it was more of a matter of just being able to throw it hard and not really have to worry about arm speed.
Yeah, he felt like it was elevated. I mean, that played up to both his changeup and his sinker. He said, like, I kind of got to throw my sinker softer, and I kind of got to wait till I tire out a little bit. Like all the things you heard old guys say about sinkers back in the 90s, like he was doing that. And, between that and his changeup and being a very, seam shift oriented after working with Bannister, it's probably not as cut and dry and easy as what Martin's doing, but it's definitely got him to where he feels like he's just challenged with his best stuff all the time and not babying pitches in or trying to get a feel for him in the same way where he's consciously taking it off. So I think they're different, but both on a similar standpoint where they feel like they've gotten upgraded stuff that they don't have to think about as much. And the more things that can be automated on the mound and aren't things you have to consciously think your way through, the better, especially for young guys who are trying to get their feet wet at this level.
Well, we have a few things to continue watching Davis Martin and his return back to the majors, and let's see if he can be a 4 or 5 type of starter. Again, that'd be a huge development win for the Chicago White Sox. See how Dominic Fletcher continues to perform at right field for the White Sox. Maybe he could hit a little bit more. That could give a little bit more confidence that he can handle the starting duties going to 2025. And we'll see if Gavin Sheets can stay hot and continue to hit in the last 6 weeks. The Chicago White Sox now head to Houston to face the red-hot Astros. The Astros, if you haven't checked out the MLB standings in a while, are now 10 games above 500. They're 65-55. They have now a comfortable lead in the American League West. First place, 3 games ahead of the Seattle Mariners. If the season were to end today, the Astros would be the number 3 seed in the American League. They are on an 8-game winning streak as the White Sox come into town. The pitching probables for this series, Friday night, 7:10 p.m. Central Time start. Garrett Crochet looking to bounce back. He'll be going up against Spencer Arrighetti. Saturday night, 6:10 p.m. Central Time. Chris Flexen trying to end this 17 consecutive game losing streak when he appears, going up against Hunter Brown. And then Sunday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time, the battle of the Southpaws, Kai Busch and Framber Valdez for the Houston Astros. And when we had around the MLB segments earlier this season, we were kind of wondering what was going on with the Houston Astros. On May 1st, the Astros were 10-19. And it appeared that new manager Joe Espada was really struggling dealing with stars that were not performing very well or stars that were just not on the field because they were hurt. And Jim, I have to give a cap tip to Joe Espada for not panicking. I mean, the Astros front office has been very active. They cut ties with Jose Abreu, and they cut ties with other players that were not performing well. And eventually, the stars, unlike the 2022 Chicago White Sox, started to play at the level of the back of their baseball cards. And here's a spot of first-time manager, but he's not new to the Astros. He's been with them for a long time, especially during this extended run of reaching the American League Championship Series Houston's on. And now he's 3 games ahead of Seattle, 10 games above 500, and they are the hottest team in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, they're 34-17 since releasing Jose Abreu.
Wow.
Which is sad. You know, it's a shame for Abreu, but also very much for the White Sox being so slow to act on any kind of veteran struggles is, perhaps it might be a useful example for future seasons. Maybe not this one because the White Sox are obviously beyond repair, but we've seen other seasons kind of handicapped by their inability to move on from a player until it's way too late. And the Astros doing it before the halfway point and benefiting handsomely. It's not just all Abreu, but it was probably a case of just both benefiting from getting one of the worst players in baseball out of everyday use and then off the roster entirely and replacing him with just, decent players. So like, I think John Singleton is basically like Gavin Sheets, who's a decent bench bat and can be occasionally pressed into service. And, so that helped there. And then, just a matter of like getting guys healthy, being, active and solving problems and trying to add talent as the season goes along. But that's what jumped out to me is that just the cutting Abreu and saying this didn't work out probably had some kind of impact. Even if you can't say like, turn the team around, it probably does to a certain degree, saying that, they must really be serious if they're the hitter they stake so much, not only money in, but it was like a big point of pride for Jim Crane and Jeff Bagwell when they signed him, saying we got an RBI guy, and then it's just turned out to be a disaster. That I imagine there has to be some kind of trickle down effect to the rest of the roster, but it does set up my dream scenario of the White Sox signing Abreu for the series, one last job, revenge series, retiring as a White Sox, roll credits, etc. Probably not going to happen, but it would be fun if it's a case of this is what people are talking about, the lack of Jose Abreu, and all of a sudden that's Jose Abreu's music.
It is August. Maybe get one more August Abreu in him. Since the All-Star break, Yordan Alvarez OPS over 1,000 in his past 24 games. He's got 6 home runs. He's batting .337 with a .447 on base percentage. Alex Bregman in his last 24 games, OPS at .887. He's slugging .560. He's got 7 homers. Yanner Diaz, in which the Astros eventually moved on from Martin Maldonado because of how well Diaz hits. He's got a .958 OPS since the All-Star break. And Jeremy Pena at shortstop, really performing well, .835 OPS. He's got 5 homers and 15 RBI since the All-Star break. So those are going to be 4 tough hitters White Sox pitchers are going to have to navigate through it. Of course, there's still Jose Altuve, but Altuve struggling a little bit post All-Star break. His OPS is .660. This is going to be a tough series, again, for the Chicago White Sox. The Astros have an 8-game winning streak, and I'm going to be paying attention to how Garrett Crochet bounces back, James, because in our previous podcast episode previewing the Yankee series, we were hopeful and we had a lengthy conversation about what was ailing Luis Robert. Luis Robert did not play any better against the Yankees and gave us the quote that he was thinking about quitting baseball because he's struggling so much. And of course, he's not going to quit baseball. He's just in a really tough spot right now, doesn't have a lot of answers on what's going on. It makes me wonder, because Crochet was so bad against the Cubs, he's not getting a break here facing the Houston Astros. And everybody knows that Yordan Alvarez can still hit lefties. So I'm wondering here if we see a different type of result for Crochet against the Astros here. Was there anything in particular that we should be watching from Crochet in this start against the Astros?
Well, for one, Crochet once gave up a walk-off double to Yordan. I think it was in 2021 that he said like zapped his confidence for like a 6-week span. But that was rookie Crochet. And also it kind of spoke to an early preview of how frank Garrett can be in interviews. I think everything, a logical question. I think I've even told Garrett as much as like from here on out when you struggle, like I think the first question is, are you tired? Is fatigue and it needs a factor? And I think he's aware of that and certainly like always a possibility. But he does have a very like explicit like command thing that he thinks is off. So like as much as he just didn't look good against the Cubs and everything was getting hit hard, like the strike zone plot of like the homers were like all like not where you want to throw the ball. And I think Garrett at his best, will throw 99 past people in some hittable locations at lower velocities, but he feels he was not getting his cutter to the glove side effectively. So Garrett kind of really harnesses the crossfire motion, which can make it really funky angles where the ball gets in, but he feels like he's been overdoing it, kind of going too far out. And as a result, that's leading to all of his cutters just splitting the plate as opposed to getting really on the black to the glove side. I think at his best, his cutter was kind of a pitch that got swung over or, laid on a lot, maybe regardless of location. So I'm a little suspicious of it, but Katz said a similar thing that they showed him kind of the biomechanics of like where he was landing and what spots it was leading to. And they feel is pretty specific. He's still viewing it as kind of a work in progress, not necessarily. No one was like coming off the bullpen session midweek and saying like, yeah, it's fixed now, all good. But I think that's obviously the thing to watch for is what spots he's getting his cutter to and how is it getting hit? Because if he's still just splitting the plate with it and it's getting hammered, and that seems like that mechanical issue is not quick to fix. And you wonder, is fatigue the reason you're not getting to the same spots with your leg drive? Or is he getting the cutter to good spots and it's still getting hit? And you wonder, has your stuff just lost a little juice because you're fatigued? It all comes back to questioning your innings load, fatigue, and all that. But specifically, we need to be looking at how the cutter plays. He's been playing around with the sinker because he very much admires Lance Lynn and loves loved his approach, I think in Garrett's like in mind's eye, he sees himself as maybe one day, throwing a four-seamer, throwing a sinker, throwing a cutter, kind of like Lance Lynn style. It wouldn't look the same. And he'd be the first to tell you, like, I'm not that good at manipulating shapes as he is, as prime Lynn was. But that's kind of a little thread in Garrett's head. Garrett like admires a bunch of pitchers who don't look anything like him. Like he loves Marcus Stroman's delivery. He wants to manipulate the ball like Lance Lynn. He's an interesting cat. But he can't really use it a ton if he's not getting the cutter to the glove side, because the whole thing about the sinker is that, it would fade away, allow him to command the play a little bit more. Maybe it becomes a thing that's kind of a turbo changeup if he doesn't get comfortable with the changeup that allows him to operate on that side of the plate a lot. But the big thing to watch for is, does the cutter is it getting on the hands of right-handers again? Is it getting the same results? Because that's what they all point to as not being there. And whether it's there or whether it's not, afterwards we can debate the reason why. But that's the key for him, is getting that cutter inside and getting the results he was getting early in the season, because we are June 30th against the Rockies was really the last Garrett Crochet start. You look at the stats and that line be like, yeah, that's the guy who made the All-Star game. That's the guy we thought was a big trade chip. It's been a little while. There are a lot of reasons for it.
It has.
He was pretty good 2 innings against the Pirates, but it's been a while since we've seen a full start that was like, all right, this is the dude that maybe you should just back up that truck for.
Well, we'll be watching the cutter on Friday and see how the rest of the weekend goes, see how Kai Busch bounces back. I don't think he can survive walking the Astros 7 times on Sunday, especially against Framber Valdez. It'll be a tough weekend for the White Sox hitters, but hey, they surprised us earlier this week against the Yankees. Maybe they got one more surprise in them this upcoming weekend. If the White Sox do get swept, they will be officially eliminated from postseason baseball in 2024, which we all know is already a foregone conclusion. Now, I mentioned that because in our last segment here, before we sign off in this podcast, a little White Sox business. As a season ticket holder, in previous seasons, you would be required to put down a deposit for postseason tickets if you did not want to lose your seats for the following season. And I hate that policy. No matter how good your team is, I I hate it. You don't have to worry about it this year because the White Sox don't have the postseason ticket deposit. Brooks Boyer, the chief revenue officer of the Chicago White Sox, spoke to James and the beat reporters earlier this week, and season ticket renewals have been sent out. Some people are getting 10% discounts. For me personally, in Section 108, we're getting a 5% ticket decrease from 2024 prices. And on the TV side, which is going to be a big factor in the type of revenue the White Sox are going to bring in 2025, the Chicago Sports Network is the name. It's not CSN. I think they're going with the CHSN acronym. Right now, the focus is trying to get the Chicago Bulls and Blackhawks launched. That network needs to be launched on October 1st, so they have some time to get everything sorted out for the White Sox. But don't worry, Jim. The John Triffin minutes will still be around for the 2025 season, as John Triffin would be coming back to be the White Sox primary play-by-play, and they're hoping that Steve Stone returns to do color. But the thing about business is, like, if you're decreasing pricing, especially in entertainment, you're hoping that by decreasing the cost of your tickets, you sell more of those tickets. And by selling more of those tickets at a decreased rate, you can make up any type of revenue that you lost from the previous campaign, season, etc. So I think that's the hope for the White Sox here, is that if we make the tickets cheaper, maybe we will sell more in 2025. I think that's an interesting strategy. I'm also curious on how much concessions are going to be in 2025, because there's this whole cost per customer type of metric that you want to maintain or increase, because what business plans on decreasing the revenue generated unless you're launching a TV network? And I think, Jim, we really need to be the canary in the coal mine here for White Sox fans. If you think the player payroll was really low in 2024, as the White Sox cut off more than $50 million from the player payroll, I'm not saying it's going to be another $50 million decrease in 2025, but I think it's pretty apparent from a White Sox business perspective that White Sox fans should expect a sub $100 million payroll in 2025, Jim.
Yeah, I'm thinking like the money that's melted off the books will stay melted off. Not so much a matter of like cutting or trading guys for the sake of trading guys, or looking for, not that they could get rid of Andrew Benintendi anyway, but in the event that he was just like a 3-win player, trading him for nothing just to get out from under his contract. I think it's more a matter of like Jimenez being gone, Moncada being gone. They just will enjoy the 10 to 12 to $20 million savings, and then just make minimal reinvestments, kind of along the lines of like the Wellington Castillo years of just trying to find adequate players who don't cost nearly as much and maybe have a little bit of upside, but also may have downside, whether it's a case of framing numbers that were a mirage or a suspension. The first ever performance enhancing drug test that went against the White Sox. So that's kind of what I'm having in mind. It is, the thing that jumped out to me was it reminded me of a few years ago with the A's when they had a big attendance dip in 2021, and then they jacked up ticket prices. And they were decent in 2021, but I think it was a matter of like revolt against just trading guys. And I think that was when they got rid of Bob Melvin too. So it's just a lot of discontent about the way things are being run. And this is not going to get any better under John Fisher, and fans are tuning them out. And the A's responded with doubling season ticket costs in some sections. And now with the A's moving somewhere, Sacramento to start, then we'll see what happens afterwards. A lot of people go back to that year and say, well, that was just the, intentionally alienating customers, driving down fan interest, saying, well, we can't be in Oakland anymore because nobody's showing up to the games. It was just the move of fan antagonism that made it easier to part ways. So I think, for fans wondering if like they're trying to move to Nashville or trying to, do something to drive down the interest in Chicago and say that they cannot succeed as the second team in a 2-team city or in Bridgeport or what have you, this would be a case of, not doing that, not raising prices to piss off fans. Like this is an olive branch, whether it's an olive branch that has like a spike on the end because the players they bring in still aren't going to be good because they have no resources to do so, remains to be seen. But I think at least it does offer something of a, we're sorry this is as bad as it is, which is how I took it. And making everything else square up is not as important because there is money already coming off the books. And if it stays off, then so be it.
The other money, revenue, the TV contract with NBC Sports Chicago and Comcast, no longer getting $70 million plus a season to broadcast White Sox games. We'll see how much revenue they can generate on their own, having their own network. Again, they can also benefit from selling advertising for the Bulls and Blackhawks. Maybe if they have good seasons this upcoming year, don't laugh, James, about the Chicago Bulls. Maybe that helps. But yeah, the White Sox are going to have a dip in revenue going to 2025. And when revenue dips, so does player payroll. And I can see them trying to do right with season ticket holders, because if this was like a 5% increase or a 10% increase going to next season, if they reference, well, inflation, I would not want to be in White Sox sales. that would be a terrible job. The renewal rate would be awful.
When Boyer spoke to us, he said, like, we talked to Chris about what we're looking at next year, and we told Chris about what our revenue picture was, and he told us about what he's looking at next year, and our end result is like reduce the prices. So yeah, I don't see the implication that this would result in similar kind of reductions in the baseball ops side was strong.
Right.
I felt.
No, it's a tough situation because you're going to be scrapping a team together on a shoestring budget, but you really need that team to play better than what they have this season to encourage more customers in attending your games and watching on television to sell advertising. If you don't, then you're going to be stuck in this type of revenue situation until you get a new chairman. And that new chairman's going to have to convince the other 29 owners when they buy the team and in their PowerPoint presentation proposal to Major League Baseball and why they should be approved as the new chairman or owners of the Chicago White Sox. I don't know if the other 29 owners are going to be cool with, by the way, I'm going to take this team into $100 million in debt so we can field a winner right away, and hopefully we can recoup those losses. I guess it's kind of worked with Steve Cohen. I mean, that's what he did with the New York Mets, but the Mets, the results for them haven't been all that great since Cohen has taken over.
Famously beloved by other owners.
Yeah, not all owners were cool with Steve Cohen, including Jerry Reinsdorf taking over the New York Mets. But it's a tricky situation for the White Sox on all faces, not just on the field, but off the field as well on the business side. So we'll see on how the renewals go for the White Sox, but it is a bit of good news as a customer that tickets should be cheaper for the 2025 White Sox season, but I think everyone is well aware if revenue is going down, player payroll is going down in 2025, prepare yourselves for the Sox Machine offseason plan project. If you're trying to come up with grand ideas, Juan Soto might be a little expensive for the White Sox spending. Even though he had 4 homers this week, would look great. You would fix right field real easily for the White Sox. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, visit us at soxmachine.com as we recap the games in Houston for the White Sox. But again, James is going to have excellent work reporting in North Carolina, visiting the Chicago White Sox affiliates. And of course, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine to gain full access for all that coverage. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen and watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you do watch us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Greatly appreciated. You can follow us on social media. We're at Sox Machine. Follow James at JR Fegan, and you can follow me at Sox Machine _Josh. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.